Conclave. This subject is something that is near and dear to me. In the Energy Conclave, we will be talking about communion and celebration with the unseen. And before we get into, or I get into what that entails, I just want to share a bit of really great information with you all in regards to our upcoming events and an exciting new sacrament that we just launched. So, first and foremost, we host a myriad of opportunities for people to gather in communion, in community format, and to work with our beautiful sacraments, silomethoxin and 5-MeO-DMT at low dosages, and hopefully find a connection with unity consciousness, a deeper sense of our truest self, and be able to step forward a little bit more regulated and excited to be present in these earth bodies. Our ceremony this month will be hosted on January 25th. That is a Sunday morning. If you want to learn more details, you can go to thesacredsynthesis.com and visit our events calendar to see how you can register to join us. Additionally, our latest sacrament is the Lover's Cacao, launch special for this beautiful loving season that we have coming up in February. And it is a microdose of silomethoxin and then a beautiful heart-shaped cacao that you can mix with your favorite milk. My preference is coconut milk with a little bit of stevia and some cinnamon. It's so delicious. The cacao is ceremonial grade, so it is very energetic and heart-opening, warm, and filled with so many micronutrients that are very good for us and the perfect replacement for your daily coffee. And then that silomethoxin provides clarity of mind and focus, which I know many of us can enjoy. So you can enjoy with yourself or go out and enjoy with others. Again, you can learn more about those beautiful items on our website, thesacredsynthesis.com. So, getting into this topic surrounding communion and celebration with the unseen, what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, I'm referring to what many of you may have already experienced, either in your journeys under psychedelic compounds, or maybe like me, have been experiencing these unseen realms since you can remember, or in various parts of your life. And recently, I read this beautiful book. It was a beautiful digital download by Kadrick Olson called Coexisting with the Paranormal. And when I read this, it kind of illuminated some things for me that I didn't have a full grasp on. And I thought it would be beautiful to share some of those insights with you, as well as going into kind of quantum entanglement, the best that I can explain it, as well as touching in on neuroscience, biofields, things like that, and maybe a little bit of systems theory. So we don't have to do what I've done a lot in my life, which is stay up all night, be in a state of fear. I've, even as a grown adult, sometimes slept with the light on, called my beloved in the night, kind of panicking about an experience that I was having. So Kadrick's teachings really help us look at things from a way that I think is very much in alignment with other teachings that we have here at the Sacred Synthesis, which is about regulating our nervous system, regulating our field, and coming into a state of curiosity rather than just living from fear. Like, how can we come into a more unified state and look at things from a more joyous perspective? So that's what I'll be talking about tonight. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first thought is how most of us were taught, either directly or subtly, that the unseen world is something to fear or completely ignore. Like, you can think of ghosts as threats, energies that you can't see are dangerous. Non-ordinary experiences are either delusion, pathology, or could be spiritual warfare. And I definitely grew up with a lot of those different beliefs and curiosities and just not knowing. And by me sharing tonight this perspective that Kadrick brings forward and what I'm really starting to align myself with, I'm not discounting that there might be some spiritual warfare going on. I'm still exploring that in my own inner landscape, but this is a way to shift our perception and perspective in these seemingly less harmful, if you can do it like that, experiences. And personal anecdote, just last month, we installed a disco ball into our home, And the disco ball started turning on its own and turning off on its own. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And then one night, these battery operated candles started turning on or had turned on after I had put them in the trash. And then I think a week later, another battery operated light within one of the bathrooms, it turned on its own. And it was just this like kind of eerie feeling. But the difference was after I had read Kedrick's digital download, before the third light, the light on in the bathroom had turned on, that was a Christmas decoration. I had read that and I was less freaked out and more in a state of like joy and elation and curiosity and like, ooh, do that again. So, and these are more of the things that I'm referring to. Some experiences you might also have is you sense things in your room. That's happened to me a lot at night when I'm reading a book. Um, Sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I feel like this face is, or many faces are right next to mine. I want to get into the whole story, but since reading this book, it's helped me conceptualize even more strongly the power of my field, the power of my desire and willingness to communicate with the unseen or to say not now, which I've been trained on in other ways, but this kind of like teaching flips it on its heel. So anyway, if you have any of those experiences, you've probably been engaged in some sort of, like I said, direct or indirect teaching that is dismissing you or saying, hey, you should be afraid of this. So I just want to propose something simple and relatively radical, that the unseen world is not a problem to be solved or to run away from, stick our head in the sand. It's really a reality to be related to. And more importantly, it's not unscientific. It's kind of an instrument of change if we so want to choose that perspective. So Cager brings forward this understanding that the paranormal is not supernatural. It's actually very natural, as natural and normal as what we deem reality from our own human perspective and uh, holographic perspective. But it's misunderstood. What we call the unseen is really not elsewhere. It's actually overlapping. It's a layer of reality that operates by laws we are only beginning to articulate. And fear does not protect us from the unseen. It actually distorts our relationship to it. And if we avoid it, that doesn't create safety at all. Actually, understanding what's going on helps us to better create safety in our own field. And the belief is that this can align with modern science perspective. So I'll do my best to kind of bring in some quantum reality that kind of dismantles materialism in some way. And again, I'm not a scientist, but these are my general understandings of some of these much more complex topics. So at the most fundamental level, matter is not solid. So atoms are over 99.99999 ongoing empty space. And I even saw yesterday, there's this brand, I believe it's a French brand, where they created a handbag that is almost, I think like maybe like, I don't know the percentage, but it's like 90 something percent air and the rest is glass. You can look this up. I think it starts with a C, the brand. And I was blown away by this. I'm like, wow, okay, this is kind of an example of like quantum reality in a handbag. So anyway, what we experience as solidity is actually electromagnetic repulsion, not things touching each other. And maybe that's a little unsettling to you, but another interesting point is that particles do not exist as fixed objects until they are observed. They exist in what are called probability waves. So reality as we know it is actually not static at all. It's actually hyper responsive. And this means the universe is not a collection of objects. It's actually a field of relationships. So when someone says, I felt something, or you might say that, but I couldn't see it, science is not really saying, hey, that's impossible, right? A more scientific approach could be, of course you did, most of reality is invisible. And then I can get into the idea of the hologram, and you can look up some of the CIA's perspective and research around all of that. And then we can get into some ideas around quantum entanglement. Again, I'm just starting to better understand what's going on here, had some conversations around a documentary we watched here a few weeks ago, and it touched on how different realities can be entangled. But at the basic level, what it is when two particles become entangled, information about one instantaneously affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. So, like, it's like saying like no signal travels, like no energy is exchanged in a classical sense, but distance doesn't weaken the connection. And this has been verified repeatedly. And I like to do my own little experiments with my own energy work and seeing, like, not telling anyone at all what I'm working on in myself and in my energetic field, my emotional body, etc. And then seeing how the different people that those stories might relate to, how it actually seemingly impacts their life without a word ever being said directly to them. And I think a lot of miracles can happen in this way. And also some relatively funky stuff can occur too. So we really need to mind our thoughts, mind our actions, mind our behaviors. And I believe Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. You can check that quote. But what people really miss about it is that connection does not require proximity, and influence does not require contact, and separation is not a law, it's actually a perception. So what we experience is telepathy, synchronicity. Some of us might experience ancestor contact. I have a dear friend whose grandfather used to say to her when he was living, "Oh, you've lost your marbles," like in a teasing way. And then after he crossed over, she started finding marbles everywhere. And you might experience some of this when you're working with sacraments, some of our compounds or some of the others that are out there to help us connect, where you're having communion with people that are perhaps present in your life or in your life in the past, people that have passed on, or other beings coming into a more like physical, in the sense, like visual form, or maybe in a touch sense in some way. And you can also experience this as a sense of being met by intelligence. So I don't really think this is a violation of physics in any way. I actually think these are like could be like non-local interactions. So, it may not be completely in what we would determine as reality, but um, there are some interactions occurring. So I think when we can get into a state of participation, like consciously participating, then the idea of like quantum physics and quantum entanglement is not so strange. It's actually making so much sense. So what else do I have here in my notes? So moving into more of like this conscious relating, if your consciousness is not passive and your attention matters, and how your framework or your state of mind, your expectations, if they can shape the experience, then I think this plays really well into what Olson's explaining in his book, which emphasizes your attitude and your mindset. And basically, like, fear collapses all possibility, but curiosity expands it, and playfulness can increase coherence. So if you approach something with a joyful curiosity, or just curiosity in general, without judgment, you're going to be able to see more quickly, more easily, the truth of an experience. And to bring this into a more human to human interaction, you might think about if you are in a conversation with someone and they say something that you don't understand, or maybe, let's take it a step further, you don't fully agree with, and think of these two outcomes. So you don't agree with what they're saying. But if you approach it with just resistance and fear, or like, denial in some way, then you don't get to better understand that person, and kind of tension just stays right here, or it can inflame and become bigger, and to the point where you may no longer have that relationship with that person. However, if you approach the disagreement of information with a little bit more curiosity, or a lot more curiosity, and like the joy of wanting to understand a person better, then potentially what you get And more times than not, you actually get a greater sense of coherence with that person and a loving acceptance of their perspective, even if you never come around to their belief or they don't come over to your side of the fence, or you might find some sort of middle ground and there becomes this deeper connection. And that's what I think is really going on here with the unseen. So the unseen doesn't really respond to authority or aggression in some way. It actually responds to resonance. And a lot of teachings out there talk about how you need to strengthen your field, you need to be sovereign in your being. And I believe all of those teachings. And I do believe at some moments there are nefarious energies that come forward where you need to be a bit more like, hey, I'm not willing to engage in this way. And what you have to do is you change your frequency. And sometimes that comes from an authoritarian type of positioning of like, hey, this is my field, I'm sovereign. But what if we can flip our mindset and approach it with more of like, hey, I'm going to change my resonance and get out of this state. So in this way, you can think of the brain is more of a filter and not a generator. So I think some of the information coming forward in neuroscience is really indicating that the brain doesn't really show us reality. It actually filters reality so we can survive. So we perceive less than a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we can delete enormous amounts of information from moment to moment. So it's like when people are like, oh, my truth is this, what they're really saying is like, my perception of reality is this. And when someone says, I don't believe in that because I've never experienced it, in reference to the unseen, the honest response is like, kind of like, yeah, duh, of course you haven't. And that might be because their nervous system may not be attuned to it. And this is where I think people who start to go through these deep healing experiences, whether it's through meditation, breath work, somatic work, psychedelics, all these different practices, psychospiritual, scientific approaches, et cetera, et cetera. I think the more we unlock our trauma and release it, which happens really quickly when working with low 5 and selmethoxin, we open up our energetic field and it actually expands our nervous system's capacity to intake more of reality, right? Think about that. Like if you're hyper vigilant and super focused and you have blinders on just so you can survive, more than likely you're not going to hear the little knocks of other beings, energetic states, etc., saying, hey, pay attention. I've got some good information for you, because you really just, you can't handle it. And I know this has been my personal experience. I was a child who had what I would describe as visitations as a young girl. And I didn't know what they were. I thought, I'd pray with my mom, I'd get really scared. And as I've grown a lot bit older, I'm starting to have a different perception of what some of these beings were. And their actual beautiful reason for coming into my room at night as a child. And in a lot of experiences in my life, I had a great deal of trauma. And then as I started doing one particular practice called Sudarshan Kriya Pranayama in my early 20s, I released a lot of densities in my energetic field, my physical body, and my mental state. And I started to have very potent prophetic dreams that never went away. And again, as I started to connect with unity consciousness through psychedelics and other practices, more of my intuition and these downloads started to come through. So I always try to relate to what I'm learning and what I'm seeing and reading from a first person perspective. And many people aren't having these, or I won't say aren't having, you may be having these embodied experiences, but you may be ignoring them because of a limited nervous system capacity, or simply like you're just not ready, right? And I think our subconscious and our conscious will show us exactly what we need to thrive, if you choose to learn and to thrive and to grow when we're ready. And it's just up to us to determine if we're ready to take that step. And there's no shame there. Like sometimes we're just not ready to go there. So I think this is why grounding practices, regulation, somatic work, ceremonial practices like we offer here at the church, Kundalini yoga, like I love so much, they're not really optional if you want to be operating at like your highest level of perception. And these things are kind of prerequisites for your biology. And I do believe that each human being is set up to have much greater levels of connection with the unseen than we're taught. And as we all know, our society, our systems have impacted a lot of our biofield and our focus, so that we're less able to perceive, right? And be these like full antennae and communication devices to higher selves and the unseen world. So if that's true, then we could talk about the body, right? And our biofields. There are measurements that the heart emits electromagnetic field that is measurable several feet beyond the skin. And our emotions measurably alter this field, and coherence can organize it and chaos distorts it. So if you're living in a constant state of heartbreak, terror, or pain, suffering, like just, these heavier emotions, and they're sticking with you and you're not able to move them out of your body, that's going to impact your electromagnetic field and your broadcast system and your like receptivity system. So I think many times, again, as we clear out our electromagnetic field, we impact our aura, so to speak. Then our antenna gets bigger and we're more easily able to sense energies and presences and shifts in our atmosphere that many can describe as field interactions, not imaginary events. So I don't think the unseen is really invading us. I think the unseen is really just interacting with what we are emitting. And this is something that, Kadrick really touches on in his beautiful digital download. So he kind of distills this into some practical wisdom, and I'll just hit some of the bullet points that he mentions. Essentially, like attracts like. We talk about that all the time. Like your vibe attracts your tribe, karma, etc. Which karma is a little bit more complicated than what we typically define it as, but the general idea of that. So familiarity creates safety. He mentions that avoidance breeds distortion. Sovereignty governs interaction, and we as humans are co-creators of our reality, and we're not victims. So you don't need to banish things that you don't understand. It's actually important that you learn to relate to them skillfully, not from a place or a lens of domination, but with the goal of being coherent with your entire reality, all of the systems that surround us. So, if you can regulate your nervous system, that's really a powerful way to protect yourself and remove fear rather than being in this state of removing the fear and removing this like false pattern of recognition. And if you can enhance your curiosity, then your clarity, might enhance. So come forward with this idea of joy, excitement, curiosity, and setting time in your day to actually sit in a quiet state and consciously choose to first, you clear out your energy field. The best way to learn how to do this easily is to take like a weekend Reiki level 1 class where you can start to tune in with your energetic field and clear out your field. And then from there, go into a beautiful prayer of protection and connection and invite in the unseen realm into your energy field, or even outside your bubble, but just near you, and say, hey, I'm ready to commune and talk. And you might be intrigued by what steps forward. And the best way, I think, besides just listening via your clair system, so like clairaudient, clairsentient, oh my gosh, there's 5 clairs, I'm blanking right now, but all the different clairs, you can also do automatic writing. So what that is you get a journal and you don't think about what you're writing, you just write. And let's see what comes through. You can have questions you want to ask a question. And then again, no judgment, no conscious writing. You can even ask your brain to shut off and just be an observer and a director of your hand. And then go back and read what has been come through. And another great trick is if you find yourself still turning on your brain and like trying to control the situation, you can write with your left hand, and that sometimes unlocks our subconscious and the unseen in a different way, where we have less control and it just naturally flows from us. So in my opinion, there are even greater ways for us to engage without fear, or be in fantasy or fragmentation. And Kadrick is really clear about this. He says, like, most difficulties people have with the paranormal are not caused by the unseen itself. It's actually caused by how humans approach it. So if you want to shift fear to familiarity, it's really about seeing what we're afraid of. So when we fear the unseen, we project intent where none exists. We might misinterpret neutral sensations as threat. We amplify experiences by feeding them emotional charge. So this is something that my spiritual mentor has been teaching me for years. Like, our emotions are a feeding ground, right? And there are unseen around us that it's just the frequency that they're at. And if we have doubt, which is one of the ones that I experience more often than some of the other negative ones, but when we have doubt or fear or hate or resentment or you name it, and we're expressing those through our energetic body, our electromagnetic field, that is naturally going to attract frequency, energy, other beings, even human beings and experiences and the unseen that are going to want to like feed off of that, because like attracts like. So really the solution is not confrontation. It's really about familiarization, and learn the language of your own perceptions and notice patterns instead of dramatizing your events. And I know that it can be difficult sometimes. And if you notice that when an experience with the unseen comes forward and you have panic and your nervous system starts to get a little dysregulated, if you can find a way to just breathe and calm yourself down, almost like you would do if you're a naturalist in like a wildlife encounter, right? Like when you see a bear, you don't take off running. You actually want to like be calm, get big, right? Um, or like a cat in the wild, like a big cat. You don't just run, because that's going to kick off their instinct to chase you. Instead, you want to just like slowly, calmly back away. You don't want to interact with that energy. And the same thing kind of applies when you feel like you're having a fearful experience with the unseen. So this is how you can become a little bit more regulated in that initial interaction. And then also, if you're starting to interpret an event and you're dysregulated, like again, you start getting anxious, you want to bring in a grounded nervous system, right? Like through breathing, calming thoughts. Maybe you have a prayer of protection. Maybe you do a visualization, which is what I like to do. I visualize this sphere of energy around me. I armor myself. I remember my field is sovereign. Then I go into this state of like, okay, am I regulated now? Breathing, grounding, finding that neutral state. And then from there, go into engagement of asking questions if you want to. And here's something I think is very important when we're communicating with all beings, not just the unseen, but you can ask the unseen direct questions and they can't lie to you. It's just this rule that I've experienced. So if you are engaging with the unseen, you can ask like, are you of the love and the light? Very simple question. And pure love and light, beings that aren't there to cause harm, they will give you a very direct yes. You'll know it's a clear yes. But energies that are resonating at a lower vibration, they're going to say like, of course, silly, or why would you say that? Why not? Duh, be a bit more sarcastic. Or they'll, if you have a clear vision, or a sensation or auditory, you might see them change their form where they get bigger or more scary because they want to create a reaction so they can feed off your energy, right? And just empower themselves a bit more. But if you can stay in the state of curiosity, even when those beings get a little bit bigger or shift, you can then say, you know what, this doesn't work for me. And like just eject them outside of your field. And just, envision them going shot out into the solar system and going far, 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 like so far away you can no longer see them or sense them anymore, right? And you can laugh at the experience. And this is a great way to engage, have some fun. And if you grow tired of it, if you're sensing an energy, you can say, I'm not available tonight. And you really have to mean it. Like, I'm not available tonight. can you come back at 2 o'clock tomorrow? I'll make time and sit down in your quiet space and see if this unseen wants to come back. So this helps you really establish a sense of energetic sovereignty. And one thing I love that Olson touches in on is that you are not powerless in your unseen interactions. You can actually govern your space, your attention, your intention, and your emotional coherence is really what helps you shape your experiences. And you may not need as much aggression or assertiveness in your protection rituals, especially when they're fueled by fear. So, some things that you could say, like, I choose clarity over confusion. I choose consciously to engage and disengage when needed. And these create boundaries, right, around the unseen realm. And they might be around you, but you might not be sensing them anymore, and can take that as a bit of like calm. And then lastly, some people like to really seek out these paranormal experiences. But just remember that, how do I say this? The unseen is not like a Hollywood movie, right? Like, I believe, have deep reverence for the unseen world, have had so many miracles and beautiful teachings, downloads occur because of my willingness to explore the unseen and open up and have this curiosity, especially in the last few years. So it's not really a performance. Like, I really encourage you to hold a state of reverence when these experiences are happening, like celebrate, like, wow, this is so cool that this is happening. But remember that there's so many realities occurring all at once. Be in a state of reverence, joy, elation. Share it with someone who you know can understand or will at least celebrate that you're having these experiences. And there's so many more people coming online and understanding the unseen. Like, for instance, if you listen to season 2 of the telepathy tapes, it really gives some, I'll say, like, perspectives from the lay person's experience and some medical professionals who didn't believe in the unseen until their science started showing them that it is. So, just remember, this is relational. It's not hierarchical. It's not a performance, and you're sovereign, right? You're not a servant. You are not prey, and you actively participate in a shared field of intelligence, whether it's what you deem as reality in like this human dimension or the unseen. It's all integrated, and we can bring these experiences into our everyday life. And what I have found, that it creates greater connection with myself, greater connection with other beings who are in a more awakened state, has helped me create clearer boundaries, has helped me listen to my intuition much more, which allows for a greater sense of ease in flowing through life. So, take this for what you will. I hope that this topic has been really helpful for you all. I'm just going to check my notes here. And, I don't want to say don't approach things with a sense of like, you don't have to fear anything. But I am kind of saying that, right? Like, when we have fear, we lose our power, right? And if you are fearless, you are the most powerful. And I believe when you add in joy, love, compassion, you can very quickly see who in your walking life, your human life, is in resonance with that. And then when you take that same application to the unseen world, you also see very clearly what energies and unseen are in resonance with those same energies, and can quickly determine, hey, I want to continue to engage with this energy, this spirit, or I don't want to. So with that, love you all. Again, remind you that every Thursday we have these conclaves, these teachings, and they touch on a myriad of topics that we find informative. We also have love when members provide their feedback on things they want to talk about and share with us. And we're continuing to bring on other subject matter experts as we advance in these teachings that can complement all of the beautiful work that so many people do with our beautiful sacraments, so that we can live in a holistic way and fully be connected in unity, body, mind, and spirit. So see you all next Thursday. And if you'd like to join us on the 25th of January for our Jaguar Light Wand ceremony, please tune in to our events calendar at thesacredsynthesis.com. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others. Love you all so much. Have a great night.